Imagine spending an entire semester buried in textbooks, poring over notes, and preparing tirelessly for the final exam, only to walk into the classroom on test day and see a classmate casually glancing at their phone while the teacher looks the other way. Cheating in school is nothing new. We've all heard whispers of it in hallways. Stories pass around like urban legends. But every so often, something happens that shakes the very foundation of academic integrity. Stories so shocking they leave students and teachers alike in disbelief. Today, we're diving into some of the most jaw-dropping cases of cheating ever caught, the kind that make you wonder, how did they think they could get away with that? These aren't just about sneaky glances at notes or whispered answers. These are tales of deception that spiraled out of control, students caught red-handed, and consequences no one saw coming. But beyond the act of cheating itself lies the real intrigue, the aftermath, the unexpected twist, and the fallout that changed everything. Some tried to outsmart the system and paid the price. Others got away, only to be blindsided by a twist they never expected. And just when you think you've heard it all, a shocking revelation turns everything upside down. Take Emma, for example. By all accounts, she was the last person anyone would expect to cheat. Bright, diligent, and ambitious, she excelled in academics and extracurricular activities alike. A model student, the kind teachers trusted and classmates envied. But when faced with the most important exam of her high school career, the pressure became unbearable. The final English exam would determine her future. College applications loomed, and the weight of expectations pressed down on her like never before. She had always played by the rules, but what if she slipped? Just this once? Her best friend, Sarah, had always been a bit of a risk-taker, someone who didn't think twice about bending the rules. And when Emma confessed her fears, Sarah offered a simple solution, a tiny slip of paper, filled with neatly written notes, tucked discreetly into the sleeve of a jacket. It seemed harmless, a safety net, just in case. As the exam began, Emma told herself she wouldn't use it. But as the minutes ticked by and the questions blurred together, the temptation became impossible to resist. A quick glance, a tiny peek. The relief was instant, washing over her like a wave. She convinced herself it wasn't a big deal. She wasn't hurting anyone. Then she heard it. A faint clicking sound echoed through the silent room. It was so subtle that at first she thought she imagined it, but something about it sent a chill down her spine. Slowly, carefully, she lifted her eye from her paper, only to lock onto the unblinking gaze of Mrs. Harris. The strict but fair teacher stood at the back of the room, watching, not moving, not speaking, just watching. Emma's heart pounded. Had she been caught? Was it just a coincidence? She forced herself to breathe, to act normal, but every muscle in her body screamed for her to panic. She stuffed the tiny note into her pocket, pulse racing. Then the bell rang. A wave of relief crashed over her as students shuffled to pack up their things. Mrs. Harris didn't move toward her. She didn't call her out. Maybe, just maybe, Emma had gotten away with it. But then, another sound. A sharp scrape of a chair against the floor. Across the room, Tom stood abruptly, his face pale, hands trembling as he fumbled with his bag. Tom had never been subtle about his cheating. He didn't bother with secret notes or clever distractions. He copied answers boldly, as if daring anyone to stop him. But this time, something was different. Mrs. Harris's eyes snapped to him. "Tom," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "What's in your bag?" The room fell into eerie silence. Tom's face drained the color. His hands hovered over the zipper, frozen in hesitation. Then, finally, he opened it. Sheets of paper spilled onto the desk. Not just any papers, answers. The exact same ones Emma had hidden moments earlier. A cold rush of dread filled her chest. Mrs. Harris picked up the sheets, scanning them with an unreadable expression. Then she looked at Tom. "You've been cheating, haven't you?" He didn't answer. His eyes flicked toward Emma. A silent plea, a desperate look. But she couldn't bring herself to meet his gaze. Mrs. Harris turned to the class, her voice sharp as a blade. "Anyone involved in this cheating ring needs to speak up. Now." A heavy stillness settled over the room. Emma's hands trembled beneath her desk. She could still feel the crumpled slip of paper in her pocket, its presence suddenly unbearable. Could this be the beginning of something bigger? Were there more students involved than anyone realized? And the most terrifying question of all, had Emma just escaped disaster, or was she about to fall even harder? The weight of uncertainty settled heavily on Emma's shoulders, a suffocating presence she couldn't shake. She knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning, just a first crack in what could be a much larger web of deception. Who else in this room was hiding secrets? Who would be the next to break under the crushing weight of guilt and fear? The air in the classroom grew thick with tension as Mrs. Harris's gaze swept over the students, her sharp eyes searching for any sign of weakness. Emma kept her head down, heart hammering against her ribs, but her thoughts spun wildly. How deep did this conspiracy go? How many others had been playing the same dangerous game? And most importantly, how far was she willing to go to protect herself? Just then, the slow creak of the classroom door sent a jolt through everyone. The room fell into complete silence, every breath held in anticipation. The principal stepped inside. A heavy wave of dread rippled through the class. His tall frame filled the doorway, his expression unreadable but charged with authority. Emma felt her stomach tighten. His presence meant only one thing. This situation had just escalated to an entirely different level. Without saying a word, he strode across the room to where Mrs. Harris stood, still clutching the incriminating papers. He glanced at them briefly before turning his piercing gaze to Tom, who remained frozen in place, his face drained of color. "What's going on here?" The principal's voice was calm, measured, but it carried an unmistakable weight that sent chills through the room. Mrs. Harris's lips pressed into a thin line. "Tom has been cheating," she said flatly, holding up the evidence. "And I have reason to believe more students are involved." A charged silence followed, stretching unbearably. The principal didn't hesitate. He gestured toward Tom. "Come with me." Tom swallowed hard, his steps shaky as he followed the principal out of the classroom. The moment the door clicked shut behind them, a collective exhale rippled through the students. But just as the tension seemed to break, the door swung open once more. This time, the principal's gaze landed directly on Emma. "You, come with me." A cold wave of fear washed over her, leaving her breathless. She barely managed to stand, her legs trembling beneath her as she walked toward the door. Mrs. Harris said nothing, but the look she gave Emma was one of deep disappointment, laced with suspicion. Each step Emma took felt like a step closer to disaster. When she finally reached the principal's office, the heavy wooden door closed behind her with a finality that made her stomach drop. She sat stiffly across from him, her palms damp against her lap as she struggled to steady her breathing. The silence stretched between them before he finally leaned forward, folding his hands together. "I've been looking into your records," he said, his tone strangely gentle. "You've always been one of our top students. But lately, something hasn't been adding up." Emma felt her throat tighten. The principal studied her carefully, his next words coming slower, more deliberate. "You didn't just cheat today, did you?" Her mind spun, searching for the right words, for any kind of defense. But before she could say anything, the corner of his mouth lifted in something that almost resembled a smirk. "I've been watching you for a while," he continued, "and I know you've been covering for someone." Her blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" she forced out, barely above a whisper. His expression didn't change. "I know about Sarah." Emma's heart nearly stopped. He leaned back in his chair, his voice quieter now, almost calculated. "She's been supplying answers to students. And you've been helping her cover it up, haven't you?" Panic surged through her veins. How much did he know? How long had he been watching? Before she could respond, the door to the office opened once again. Sarah stepped inside. Her face was pale, her usual confidence nowhere to be seen. "Emma," her voice trembled, barely a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Everything fell into place in an instant. The whispered conversations, the quiet exchanges in the hallways, the student who always seemed to have the right answers. Sarah hadn't just been helping a few friends. She had orchestrated an entire operation, and Emma had unknowingly become a part of it. But the principal's expression remained unreadable. He wasn't here to simply punish them. He had known all along. "This isn't just about cheating," he said slowly. "It's about something much bigger." The realization struck Emma like a bolt of lightning. Sarah hadn't just been slipping notes to students at their school. She had been running a full-fledged cheating ring, stretching far beyond the walls of their classroom. And now, the principal was ready to dismantle it piece by piece. The office door clicked shut behind Sarah. Emma sat frozen in her chair, her thoughts racing, her pulse wild in her ears. The principal's voice softened, but it held the weight of something final. "Sarah came to me a few days ago," he admitted. "She told me everything." Emma turned to Sarah, eyes wide with betrayal, but Sarah wouldn't meet her gaze. "She's been working with students across the district," the principal continued. "And Emma, you were caught in the middle of it." A sharp pang of guilt twisted inside her. It wasn't just a mistake anymore. It was Sarah's, too. She had trusted her friend. And now, because of that trust, she was entangled in something that could ruin everything she had worked for. But then, a strange relief washed over her. The truth was out. The suffocating weight of secrecy was gone. The principal exhaled, his expression less severe now. "Sarah will face the consequences, as will everyone involved." He paused, studying Emma's face. "But this isn't just about punishment. It's about teaching you all a lesson. About integrity, responsibility, and how quickly things can spiral out of control when you make the wrong choice." Emma swallowed hard, nodding slowly. The shame was unbearable, but she knew he was right. She had let herself get swept up in something she didn't fully understand, blinded by pressure and desperation. And now, she had to face the consequences. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely able to look him in the eye. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." The principal's gaze softened. "I know, Emma." He sighed. "That's why we're giving you a chance to fix it. But you have to learn from this. You can't let it define you." When Emma finally stepped out of the office, she felt as though a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The future was still uncertain, and she had a long road ahead to rebuild her reputation. But for the first time in a long time, she saw a clear path forward. A path that didn't involve shortcuts. As for Sarah, her fate had already been sealed. She would face the full consequences of her actions, and before long, she transferred to another school. Their friendship, once unshakable, was shattered beyond repair, because in the end, it wasn't just about grades. It was about trust, and once broken, that was something no test score could ever fix. Emma had learned the hard way that the choices we make under pressure define who we are. And no matter how tempting the easy road may seem, the cost of taking it is always far greater than the reward.